Hello and welcome to Assure Learns, another edition of Assure Learns. And today we are going to dive into post-incident drug and alcohol testing. So what we're going to accomplish in this webinar is helping you as an employer, supervisor, or safety professional, helping you get confident on what you need to know before, during, and after an incident. And more specifically, when do we do drug and alcohol testing and when do we not do drug and alcohol testing? Because the Canadian model has some things to say about this, and we're going to dive into that. So before we dive in, Assure occupational testing, what we're up to here at Assure is ensuring that your workers are fit for duty and your workplaces are safe. And how we do that is through drug and alcohol testing, occupational health testing, supervisor training and policy development. My name is John Riccocci, founder and CEO of Assure, and I am the presenter for today. If you've got any questions as we go, just open up the chat, put them in there. I'll be checking that as we go through today. So here's where we're going to go today in this webinar. Post-incident testing. We're going to talk about why this testing matters. We're going to talk about when do we test, when do we not test. I want you to be really clear on that by the time you leave this webinar. We're going to talk about the steps of handling a post-incident situation. I'm going to give you a flow chart, super simple, super easy flow chart to walk through when you're handling a post-incident situation. And then what is the supervisor's role in these situations and what is it not? And for the term, or for the purposes of what we're talking about today, supervisor is the same as a manager, a leader, HR, safety professional, covering all of those roles in the term of supervisor for our purposes today. So first off, why does post-incident testing matter? Question that we'll get often is, can we test? Should we be testing? There was an incident, someone has crashed a truck, someone injured themselves. Are we allowed to test? Are we not? When do we test? So again, that's what today is all about. I want to make sure you're clear on what you're allowed to do, not allowed to do, or what the best practices are. So we do drug and alcohol testing when there's an incident for the following reasons. It helps you as a company identify whether drugs or alcohol may have contributed to an incident. This is important information when you're doing an investigation after an incident. Were drugs or alcohol a factor? It's going to support workplace safety investigations. It's going to help you apply your policies consistently. If your drug and alcohol policy at your company states we do post-incident testing, then you get to do post-incident testing consistently, enforce that consistently amongst your entire staff every time there's an incident. This testing is going to help you meet contractual or client requirements. Some of you have signed contracts and agreements to work on site and other property owners' site, and the agreement might have a section that it states if there's an incident, your company is required to complete post-incident drug and alcohol testing. And they're likely going to say, well, what is an incident? I'm going to define that for us in a second, but you also get to be clear on what does that contractor, what does that site owner's definition of an incident mean? Number 5 is going to help you support a defensible decision-making process and identify opportunities to prevent future incidents. So if substance use was a factor, and if you've got an employee that was consuming substances that led to the incident, you want to know and you need to know this information as an employer so that you can mitigate risk in the future, so that you can get that employee support, the proper support they need. So what is post-incident testing? Post-incident testing is a drug or alcohol test conducted following a workplace incident when the employer's policy and circumstances support testing. So are you gonna call Assure and say, I need to bring a worker in for post-incident testing if last night they injured themselves while they were off work, while they were quadding? They had an incident, but it was at work on their own time. No, that is not a post-incident event. So this, of course, gets to happen while they're on work time, carrying out work duties. So it gets to be current. It gets to be something that happened right now. It may also be referred to as post-accident, post-event. Your policy might call it different things. So here's an important distinction that I really want to land. Testing should be part of a well-designed incident response. It is not an automatic reaction to every incident. Just because there's an incident doesn't automatically mean call us, sure, let's book them for a drug and alcohol test. This is what the Canadian model for providing a safe workplace recommends. Canadian model is considered the best practice for drug and alcohol testing policies and procedures in our nation. And it recommends that whenever there's an incident, if you're going to do drug and alcohol testing, you also must have reasonable cause to believe substances may have been a contributing factor. So incident does not automatically equal test. Side note on that, if you're working on a site owner's site and the agreement that you've signed says any incident, you must do a test, you get to honor the agreement that you've entered into with that site owner. Separate from that, as a company, Canadian model recommends just because there's an incident, that's not enough to say we're requesting a drug and alcohol test. There also needs to be an incident, also needs to be combined with reasonable cause to believe substance use may have been a contributing factor. If so, now we can request a test. We're going to keep unpacking that as we go. So when should you consider testing? Here's some things to think about to give you confidence in your decision to proceed with a drug and alcohol test after an incident. So here's some things to consider. Did the incident involve serious injury or potential for serious injury? So injury to who? To a person, somebody else, to property, to the environment. So injury can mean many different things. Was there significant property or equipment damage? Was there a vehicle incident, a near miss, safety critical event? So again, that's just highlighting your company might call it different things. Near miss, safety critical event, a violation of a safety critical rule. Was there reasonable grounds to believe impairment may have contributed? So many of you are familiar with our supervisor reasonable cause training course. It's a 3-hour certificate course for managers, supervisors to understand what is a reasonable cause situation, what is an employer's and a supervisor's rights and obligations in those situations where an employee presents having we have reasonable grounds, we have reasonable suspicion to believe this employee may be unfit for work because of substance use. So a lot of you are familiar with that course, with reasonable grounds. Again, I want us to be grounded in if there's an incident, we have an incident, but we also have reasonable grounds to believe. So a lot of the things that you've learned, that your supervisors learned, were trained on in that course, exactly come into play in these same situations. So you get to ask yourself, question at the bottom there, could impairment reasonably have been a contributing factor? Important word is reasonably. You don't have to be 100%. If you smell alcohol, if there was an incident, you come on the scene to perform post-incident investigation, and you smell alcohol on the employee's breath. You open the vehicle door. You're smelling marijuana. If you're smelling things, that's reasonable grounds to believe substance use may have been a contributing factor. That's all you need. We don't have to be 100%. The drug test, the breathalyzer is going to show us where substance is a factor or not. You have to have reasonable grounds to believe. So if you want your supervisors to be trained more deeply and specifically on what reasonable grounds are, that's where I recommend our supervisor reasonable cause course. And you can reach out to us and find out the dates on the next offerings of that. So when should you not automatically test? So there's some instances where you don't automatically test. Don't base it solely on an injury occurring. We've landed that one already today. Just because there's an incident, just because the worker makes a mistake, just because the worker is upset or emotional, something feels like they're acting uncharacteristically, just because one of those things is true, it's not an automatic jump to request a test. So don't base it solely on a supervisor's personal suspicion. I just feel like I get the sense we're not basing it off of feelings and senses. We're basing it off of objective observations. So what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? Objective things, articulable things. If somebody was to ask, John, why did you take that employee down to Assure for a drug test? I need to be able to articulate clearly and specifically my reasons, not just feelings and hunches. So last bullet point there is be cautious about testing based solely on the fact that an employee works in a safety sensitive position. I want to highlight this one because who are we testing? Who do we conduct drug and alcohol tests on in the workplace? Canadian model says we're only testing those people who work in safety sensitive positions. But that alone isn't enough to say you got in an accident. Oh, and you're safety sensitive? Test. You got in an accident and you're safety sensitive and reasonable grounds to believe substances may have been a contributing factor. That's such an important key. So let's talk about when there is an incident. Let's talk about the first 15 minutes. What happens first? First thing you're going to do, of course, is protect people. If somebody is physically injured, does 911 need to be called? Do they need to be transported to a hospital? Of course, that's number one. Drug and alcohol test is going to be secondary to any life-threatening concerns. That is, of course, number one, address immediate hazards, provide first aid, emergency response, secure the scene. The second is to preserve things. Don't disturb the scene unnecessarily, secure equipment, vehicles where appropriate, put up barriers if needed to keep people out. Who witnessed this? Who can speak to this? Who can write a statement? We're going to secure those things. We want to gather all of the evidence possible. Thirdly, separate the investigation from assumptions about impairment. So we're not going to accuse the employee. We don't have all the information at this point. We're going to come in neutral. We're going to come in curious at this point. We're going to come in wanting to get more information, not coming in accusatory. Come in neutral, ask good questions, be curious, be open, gather as much information as possible. So don't diagnose impairment. You're going to stick to observable facts. Number 4, notify the appropriate people. Who gets to be involved in this? As HR, HSE, so appropriate safety people, management, emergency services. I don't want to deal with this alone. Who do I get to call for support? I get to get a team around me to make sure I'm dealing with this, that we are all handling this appropriately. Upholding the dignity of the employee, of anybody who's involved, protecting the scene, protecting the company. So what is a supervisor's role? So the manager, the owner, the person in charge, what's their role in these situations? It's not to be a drug and alcohol expert. That's one thing. Your job is to observe, confirm, document, confront, and arrange testing. So observe. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you paying? Pay attention to what's in front of you, and you're going to document it. Confirm means I don't want to deal with this on my own as a supervisor. I want somebody else to come alongside me, and two of us are going to be in agreement on how to handle this appropriately together. I want someone to help me see my blind spots, to see what I'm not seeing, to support me in this. I want to make sure I'm following the steps properly. You get to do the same thing. So confirm with somebody else. Document, document, document. Pull out your post-incident report forms. Our reasonable cause report form would also support you here. Maybe your policy has, your drug and alcohol policy has a reasonable cause form. That can be used in and combined with your post-incident forms. You're going to confront, meaning you're going to step in, remove the employee from duty. You're going to do an investigation, make an assessment, and arrange testing, call Assure and arrange drug and alcohol testing if deemed necessary. You're going to report to the proper people. You're going to follow your company policy. If you're not familiar or aware with all of the specifics of the policy, first off, you get to become familiar with it. But in the moment, if you forget pieces, this is where we get to have a team, we get to confirm. call HR, call your manager, make sure that you're following the appropriate steps. Contact appropriate internal, external resources, maintain confidentiality always. So what are we documenting? Again, you're going to document what you saw, heard, what the employee said, time, location. So where did it happen? What was the address? Who was there? Who observed it? Physical indicators, if relevant. A lot of these things, physical indicators, are going to be stumbling when they walked, slurred speech, odor of alcohol or marijuana. Liquor bottle was present at the scene. What are the actions that were taken? So based on what we saw, the actions that were immediately taken were secured the scene. We removed the employee from duty. We took them to a safe place. I contacted another manager. Who was that manager? How did I contact them? Were they there in person? Were they there on the phone? What decision did we make? The decision was made that yes, there was reasonable grounds to believe that substance use was could have been a contributing factor. So therefore, we called Assure. We gave them a heads up that we would be driving them into the clinic, or that they booked us an appointment at a clinic in another town. And who drove them? What time did you drive them? What time was their appointment? All the details, document everything. Once the test was completed, we drove them home, made sure they had safe transportation. All of that you're going to document. So here's some things that you're going to avoid. You're going to avoid saying things like the employee was obviously drunk. There's no way that you could know that they were obviously drunk. Breathalyzer will prove impairment. What we can say is we can't say obviously drunk. We could say they had difficulty maintaining balance and they smelled strongly of alcohol. That would be an appropriate thing to document. So here's some other things about good documentation versus poor documentation. So we want to focus on observations. We're avoiding conclusions. Observations are what we're after. Conclusions are what we're avoiding. So here's some examples of things that you're going to document on your report. You're going to say employee was their speech was slurred when they talked. They smelled of alcohol. They had bloodshot eyes. These are things you can physically see and observe. Unsteady walking, confused responses. Ask them a question, what day it is. They weren't entirely sure what day of the week it was. Conclusion. This is what we're going to avoid. Employees impaired. Employees drunk. Employee used drugs. There may be a baggie of weed around them. There may be an empty liquor bottle beside them. Did you see them actually drink it and consume it? If you did, you can document that. If not, we're going to avoid things like they used drugs. Employee is intoxicated. We're going to avoid that, and we're going to say what are it may look like intoxication. So the indicators of intoxication would look like unsteady walking, slurred speech. Those are things that we're going to document instead of saying that. Employees under the influence, similar thing there. So here's a decision, simple decision flow chart. Incident occurs. First thing is everyone safe? Safety first. 911 gets the first call. Assure gets the second call if 911 gets to be involved. Does the incident meet the policy's testing criteria? So you get to be familiar with your company's post-incident drug and alcohol testing criteria. Does this meet the criteria? Some of you will have your policies will get specific. There's to determine what is an incident. That's something that's good to get familiar with, good to get intimate with your policy. What constitutes an incident for your company? Is there a dollar amount put on it? Does it need to involve bodily injury to an employee? Whatever it is, get connected with it to make sure that does this meet the criteria of an incident? Then is testing appropriate and justified? It gets to be included with paired together with reasonable cause to conduct drug and alcohol testing. Then we're going to contact the testing facility. Whether you're working on a remote site, wherever you're working, you're going to call Assure and say, we are an hour away from whatever the nearest major center is. We've got over 200 collection facilities across Canada. Our staff is going to get you connected with a drug and alcohol testing facility, the closest one to wherever you're working. So contact us, get that testing arranged, and somebody gets to drive that employee to the appointment and they get to drive them home. So another thing that we want to highlight is that timing is critical. When there's an incident, secure the scene, medical issues take precedence. We're going to deal with all of that first. Then we're going to make sure that testing happens as soon as possible. Some of you might be familiar with the DOT, the Department of Transportation. The DOT rules are we don't conduct drug and alcohol. So most of your companies, I'm going to preface this before I give you this. Most of the companies that are represented here, most of the companies who we represent at Assure do not follow under the DOT guidelines. You're not subject to DOT. Some of you are, and you get to follow these. I offer these timelines because a lot of us are familiar with them. And I want to preface this because we're familiar with these timelines. And a lot of us think that it's law and we can't step outside of them. If you're not under the DOT, then you're not bound by these, but they're still a good practice. But you may be bound by them if your policy states these timelines. And what the timelines are is after an incident, we don't conduct alcohol testing after 8 hours, and we don't conduct drug testing after 32 hours after the event. So again, I didn't put that on the slides because most of you aren't actually bound by that, but I do like prefacing it because it still highlights the importance of timing is critical. You get to complete testing fast, especially when alcohol is involved. Alcohol is going to be eliminated from a person's body quickly. You want to get them down to a testing facility quickly and blowing into a breathalyzer to get an accurate result, to get all the information to find out what are all the contributing factors to this incident. So delays can affect detectability of drugs because, again, they're eliminated quickly, can affect the test results, timelines, employee availability. The longer you leave it, did the employee go home? All right, we need to get them a test. Somebody took them home. Okay, now we got to get them back. So the sooner you do it, the easier it is. And I also want to highlight too, have your testing provider in place before an incident occurs at 2 a.m. and then you're trying to figure out, who do we call? Who do we know? And I can't stress enough, one of the benefits of working with Assure is you just have to have one number, and wherever you're working across the country, call us. We're going to get you set up for testing anywhere across the country. So you don't have to have 200 phone numbers. Just call us. So another important question, what type of testing should be used? Depending on the program and the circumstances, question that we'll get is, what's the best test? So the best test always depends on the purpose. So in a post-incident situation, post-incident, that's the focus of today's Assure Learns. In a post-incident, my recommendation is going to be to do an instant test. Whether you decide to do an instant oral fluid or instant urine, that's up to you. But do an instant test so that you can get results same day. If you want to do lab testing, we always recommend lab testing. That's the gold standard of testing. It's the only legally defensible drug test result is a laboratory MRO confirmed result. In an incident, it's always good to know the information same day. At least we've got a preliminary screen result today. So you're not waiting multiple days for a laboratory result. Do you do oral fluid? And the Canadian model supports that. Canadian model supports that. It supports urine instant testing. It still doesn't support instant oral fluid testing. Now that we know changes are coming to the Canadian model, they may change that coming. But as it stands today, Canadian model only supports instant urine testing, doesn't support instant oral fluid. So you might say, well, we still want oral fluid because oral fluid is a better indicator of what a person's consumed recently. So if you did that, then our recommendation would be to do a laboratory oral fluid test. So if you've got more, questions around that, you get to, reach out to us anytime. Myself, Carrie, anyone at the front at our reception team would be happy to walk through and find out, help you determine what's the best. But to reiterate, instant test paired with a laboratory drug test for post-incident would be my recommendation, as well as a breath alcohol test. One final note on that, and you get to be really intimate with your post-incident drug and alcohol testing policy, because if your policy says we will, after post-incident situation, we'll conduct drug and/or, there's an and/or, drug and/or alcohol testing, then you're only going, if it says and/or, then you're only going to do the type of test based on the observable facts that you're seeing in front of you. So if all of your observable facts are smelled like alcohol, empty whiskey bottle was found in their vehicle at the scene, and all of your evidence is around alcohol, then you should only be doing alcohol testing. But if your policy states after an incident when there's reasonable grounds to believe substance use may be a factor, we will conduct drug and alcohol testing. If it says drug and alcohol testing, then just every time you're doing both drug and alcohol. So get familiar with that as well. So other questions that we'll get is, in these situations, what happens at the testing facility? What can we expect? What can the supervisor expect at the facility? Typical process is you as the manager, supervisor, will contact Assure. The employee isn't setting up their own testing. You're calling to set up testing because you get to request the type of testing and be able to answer some of the questions that we're going to ask you, during booking. What's the reason for the test? Confirm the type of testing. If you've got an account with us, all of this is going to be on file already, but we do like to confirm it with you at the time of the test. So a supervisor, going to transport them to a collection facility. ID is going to be confirmed. So they're going to bring their photo ID. If we know in these situations, sometimes we can't be as organized in a post-incident situation as other times. So if ID can't be confirmed, they show up to the clinic and they don't have photo ID. Quite often, what's acceptable, and this can be up to your company, what's acceptable is if a supervisor verifies their identity. So they'll have to sign saying, yes, this is John Ricochier, verified that that's who he is. And so my manager would sign off for me. So that can be accepted, but you as a company get to decide, will you accept that or not? Number 4, collections completed, specimens sealed and documented, sent off to the lab. Chain of custody pertains to procedures that we follow to ensure that it's that employee sample that's being bottled at the testing facility that's given to Purelator. Purelator is handing it off to the lab. The lab is handing that result to the medical review officer, who sends it back to our office. That's all the steps of chain of custody. We ensure that chain of custody is maintained. Number 7, the specimen is sent to a lab where applicable, results reported securely to the designated employee representative at your company. So what if the screen test result is non-negative? So we're talking about here is the instant test. So you get the result same day. What if it's non-negative? Meaning it's something has shown up in their initial sample. So some companies will say, we just want to do the instant test. We don't want to do the lab test. Just give us the instant result. Well, what if that instant result says non-negative? We are always going to recommend that you do not base an employment decision or a response, a disciplinary decision based on just an instant test, because that instant test is not legally defensible. So if something shows up, it's always going to be recommended that you send that sample to the lab to be confirmed. So any screen test gets sent for confirmation, gets sent for medical review, and then that becomes the final result. So a few mistakes that employers can make. So here's some things that you get to avoid. Avoid testing every employee after every incident. Again, we're combining post-incident with reasonable cause. Waiting too long to arrange testing. The longer you wait, the less accurate those test results may be because the drugs and alcohol can be eliminated from their system. Number 3, not following policy. Cannot stress enough. You get to follow your company's policy. Supervisors make decisions based on assumptions. So we're never making decisions based on assumptions. It's on observable facts. Number 5, failing to document observations. If we don't document it, it didn't happen. 6, not having an after hours testing process. So not having it thought through. What if it's midnight and the sole supervisor on site has an incident? Does that supervisor know the steps and what our company procedures are? If not, you get to have a training session with your team and make sure they know who to phone, what the process is, where the report forms are. They get to know what the procedures are. Number 7, treating a drug test result as proof of impairment. So a drug test result does not prove impairment. Even from the lab, it doesn't prove impairment. What it proves is that substance that showed up in the lab and was reported to your company. What it proves is that substance was in their system, present in their system at the time of collection. There's no drug test that proves impairment. There's no drug test that proves impairment. I know this might seem like, well, then why are we doing testing? It's an important piece of evidence. We do testing to show that drug was present in their system at the time of collection. That's important information. It also highlights, this is why this is on here, it's to highlight the importance of your report forms, the importance of 2 supervisors saying, here's what we saw, here's what we heard, the observable facts that we saw at the scene. That report form combined with a positive laboratory report form, it bolsters the evidence and bolsters the action that your company is going to take. Number 8, failing to maintain confidentiality. Only those who need to know get to know the information. So after hours, highlight this a little bit more. Do you have a testing provider? Does your team know the phone number of who to contact after hours to arrange post-incident testing? Does your provider have mobile collection capability? Sometimes our collectors, it makes more sense for our collectors to go to site, to go to the scene of an incident, or to go to a hospital and do it in the waiting room washroom. This has all happened. Every situation is a little bit different. Is that a possibility? Do your supervisors have procedures? Have you talked through and thought through transportation? Do they know who to contact at your company if they've got questions about procedures? Who gets to make the decisions? Do they know where the forms are? Is there a clear policy? So how we can help you, how Assure can support your organization before, during, and after an incident. Before, maybe you're hearing this and listening to this and realizing, it's been a while since we've looked at our policy. It might need a review. It might need a complete revamp. We want to make sure that we're up to the current standards. Reach out to us. We write policies. We review and revamp drug and alcohol policies and make sure that you've thought through all these situations and that you're up to date. Before, another thing to support you with supervisor reasonable cause training. This is where your team gets to get clear on what are we allowed to do and not allowed to do, adhering to Canadian human rights and OH&S when it comes to testing in the workplace. And get your testing provider set up. If you don't already have an account with us, And all of these situations are on file. What kind of tests do you do for pre-employment, post-incident, reasonable cause? If you want to do a review with our front-end team, reach out to us. Let's walk through your account and make sure that you're set up and that you have peace of mind knowing that if here's an incident, that your team has, that we've got the information to support your team in these situations. So we'll support you with setting up drug and alcohol testing no matter where you're working. Mobile testing is an option for you. Coordinated collection and after would be if an employee has been non-compliant with your company's drug and alcohol policy because of the use of substances. The next best step is to complete a substance abuse professional assessment to support you with coming up with next steps in a return to duty plan for that employee. We'll support you with follow-up testing and again, program review, return to duty program review. Our goal here at Assure is not just to be a testing provider, it's to help support you and your company build a process that works when an incident happens. So bringing it to a close, some things to remember. Safety comes first. Stabilize the situation before coordinating testing. Don't assume impairment. Document observations, not conclusions. Follow your company policy. Follow your policy. Number 4, act promptly. Time matters when arranging testing. Medical attention first, quickly after is testing. Have a plan. Number 5, have a plan before you need one. Know who to call and your team make sure your team knows who to call, where to send employees on what happens next. So if you've got any questions, if you want support with any of this, reach out to us, assuretesting.com, email me, john@assuretesting.com. We're here to support you every step of the way. It's been a pleasure being with you today. Thank you for your time, and we will see you on the next one.